attosecond light pulses, this is starting to change. The challenge was an extremely short timescale. It took several decades to overcome this barrier. Attosecond science allows us to address fundamental questions, such as the timescale of the photoelectric effect, for which Albert Einstein received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. With attosecond pulses, we can study how the distribution of electrons oscillates within molecules and materials. The information about charge fluctuations holds secrets and solutions to how to control electronic migration. With attosecond chemistry, specific chemical bonds can be selectively broken or formed, giving us a control to tailor new materials. With attosecond physics, we can study charge transfer processes in materials, and they are the key elements in the function and optimization of solar cells, batteries, catalysts, and electronics, as a few examples. The origin of this year's prize can be traced to the late 1970s and the early 1980s, when atoms in strong laser fields were studied. Our laureates discovered that it was possible to generate attosecond light pulses by controlling the interaction between lasers and atoms. They developed methods for measuring the duration of these pulses. They also developed techniques for generating both pulse trains and individual pulses. Emeritus Professor Agostini, Professor Dr. Krauss, and Professor Anne Lollier, you have been awarded the 2023 Nobel Prize in Physics for experimental methods that generate attosecond pulses of light for the study of electron dynamics in matter. It is an honor and a privilege to convey to you the warmest congratulations of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. I now ask you to step forward to receive the Nobel Prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
First, Professor Agostini, born in Tunisia, affiliated to the Ohio State University in the United States of America. Thank you, family members. Professor Krauss, born in Hungary, affiliated to the Max Planck Institute and the Ludwig Maximilians Universität in Germany. Anne Lhuillier, born in France, in Paris, currently working at the Lund University in Sweden. this giant round of applause, it's time for the prize in chemistry and a speech by Professor Heiner Linke.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Materials can have strikingly different properties. For example, materials can be hard, soft, or brittle. They can be transparent, reflective, or colored. They can conduct electricity and heat, or they can be good insulators. They can be magnetic or non-magnetic, or melt at high or at low temperatures. When humans have discovered new materials, they have often fundamentally changed our society. Early examples are bronze, iron, and steel. The currently ongoing digital transformation and electrification are enabled by semiconductors and battery materials. Traditionally, to create a new material, we choose new chemical and structural compositions. That means we order atoms in new constellations. However, early in the 20th century, very soon after the development of quantum theory, a striking prediction was made. According to quantum mechanics, the properties of a material could be completely changed if it was made so small that it was only a few atoms across. In other words, it should be possible to modify a material's properties just by adjusting its size without changing its composition. For example, if particles were made small enough to squeeze together the electron's quantum wave, the electron should be able to store more energy, and which they could then release to a bright photon, so that larger particles would emit red light and smaller particles blue light. Let me illustrate this. If you think of my fingernails as materials, you can see they have different sizes, but they look all the same. If they were at the nanoscale, then a large fingernail might look red, a smaller one might look blue, and with all colors in between. For several decades, this remained a purely theoretical prediction. It seemed almost impossible to make particles consisting of a specific number of atoms with the required perfect crystallinity and pristine surfaces. Alexei Yakimov solved this challenge using glass-making methods. During the cooling process of molten glass, he managed to create copper chloride crystals whose color varied with size, precisely as predicted by quantum mechanics. He had discovered that it was possible to make quantum dots. Louis Bruce paved the way to producing quantum dots that were free in solution using standard chemical methods. His discovery triggered a wave of interest in learning how to make these new nanostructures, these new nanomaterials, and in using them for exciting applications. At first, however, it was difficult to produce quantum dots of sufficiently high quality and in large enough quantities. Munji Bawendi developed an ingenious chemical method that produced very high quality quantum dots that could be modified to create more complex structures and was scalable to industrial production levels. The discoveries of this year's laureates have made decisive contributions to the interdisciplinary field of nanoscience. Nanotechnology is about making structures 1,000 times smaller than a strand of hair and using them for better, safer, and more powerful devices and technologies. Quantum dots, specifically, are used to explore the inner life of biological cells, to improve screens and the quality of energy-saving LED lighting, and to mark tumor tissue during surgery. There's also intensive research into using quantum dots for improved solar cells in flexible electronics or in future quantum communication. Munji Bawendi, Louis Bruce, and Alexei Yakimov, your discovery of quantum dots and how to make them has opened up a new way of designing materials and helped catalyze the field of nanoscience. This is a truly great achievement for the benefit of humankind. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, I wish to convey you our warmest congratulations. May I now ask you to step forward and receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
First, Professor Bawendi, born in France, Paris, affiliated to MIT in the United States. Professor Brew, an American at the Columbia University in New York, receives the prize from the Swedish King. Third laureate in chemistry, Alexei Yekimov, of Russian origin, nowadays living and working in the United States of America. Le spectre de la rose from Les Nuits d'été by French composer Hector Lelio. soprano Julia Sprochén to the tunes of L'Humidité by Hector Berlioz, French composer. And now onwards to the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. DNA is the genetic blueprint that defines what we are. A fish, a honeybee, a lemon tree, or a human. RNA is less well known, but equally important. Messenger RNA, or mRNA, carries genetic information and acts as a template for protein production. Thousands of different mRNA molecules are present in each of our cells at any given time, instructing the cells how to develop and what functions to execute. Conversion of DNA to mRNA to protein is an evolutionary conserved process, that is common to all forms of life. Messenger RNA was first defined by Jacob and Monod in 1961, a discovery that was awarded with the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1965. Although the identity and function of mRNA has been known for over 60 years, and mRNA is routinely used in most modern medical research laboratories, the term has remained largely obscure outside the scientific community until recently. This year's Nobel Prize laureates in Physiology or Medicine, Professor Katalin Karikó and Professor Drew Weissman, have ensured that the term mRNA is now broadly recognized. Most of us present here today have received one or several mRNA vaccine doses in our arm, a process that directs some of our cells to produce the encoded protein for a short while. If the mRNA encodes a foreign virus protein, such as in the case of the COVID vaccines, this will alert our immune system to stimulate a response against the virus, protecting us against disease should we later become infected. RNA molecules are elegantly simple in their composition, with just 4 building blocks, nucleotides, linked together in different order to encode any protein of interest. Katalin Karikó, an expert mRNA biochemist, and Drew Weissman, a skilled immunologist, shared a vision of using mRNA as a generic carrier of information for clinical applications. But early results showed limited success. Karikó and Weissman realized that to achieve their goal, they needed to understand how our cells respond to different forms of RNA at the molecular level. In a breakthrough discovery published in 2005, they demonstrated that mRNA produced with standard nucleotides evoked an undesired inflammatory response in our cells. They found that this reaction was circumvented when one of the 4 nucleotides was chemically modified to mimic our own mRNA. This finding provided a solution to a major problem previously facing all mRNA-based clinical applications, propelling the mRNA technology into a whole new era. The discovery by this year's Nobel Prize laureates in Physiology or Medicine surprisingly enabled the development of effective vaccines that helped control a devastating pandemic and save millions of lives 15 years later. In 2020, the scientific community, together with governments, the private sector, and regulatory authorities, demonstrated that it's possible to greatly reduce the time needed for vaccine development in situations where this is urgently needed. Science communication is challenging. A silver lining of the pandemic was the opportunity to increase public's awareness and knowledge about infectious threats and how our immune system functions. Terms like mRNA, virus variants, antibodies, T cells and B cells are now common to most people understand these terms. And surveys demonstrate that the public's trust in scientific research increased during the pandemic. The basic research performed by the 2023 laureates in physiology or medicine no doubt contributed to this. This year's prize is very much in the spirit of Alfred Nobel, a groundbreaking contribution to the greatest benefit of humankind. Dear Professors Carrico and Weissman, on behalf of the Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet, it's my great joy and privilege to convey to you our warmest congratulations. I invite you now to step forward to receive the Nobel Prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Speech by Professor Gunilla Karlsson Hederstam. And first to receive the medicine prize is Katalin Carrico. Born in Hungary, affiliated to the Szeged University in Hungary and the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. Weissman, American, working at the Penn Institute for RNA Innovations and the University of Pennsylvania. Yes, given how the research has had implications for the fight of COVID, it's truly in the spirit of the will of Alfred Nobel that originally stated that the prize should go to discoveries that have benefited mankind the most during the past year. Before we move on to the Literature Prize, another musical interlude. Meine Lippen, sie küssen so heiß, from Juditha by Franz Lehmann.
Ich weiß es selber nicht, warum man gleich von Liebe spricht, wenn man in meine List, in meine Augen schaut und meine Hände küsst. Ich weiß es selber nicht, warum man von den Zauber spricht, dem keiner widersteht, wenn mich sieht, wenn
And here we have Jon Fosse about to receive his prize in literature. After a speech by the Swedish Academy's Professor Anders Olsson.
Eders majestäter, ärade pristagare, mina damer och herrar. Att träda in i Jon Fosses värld är att komma till en trakt av största oro och beslutsvånda. Hans rika författarskap kretsar kring den enskilda människans vilsenhet och svårigheter att finna en väg i livet.
In English then.
Vare sig han skriver prosa, dramatik eller lyrik,
his
närmar han sig
writing
ett
approaches a
osäkert
state of
tillstånd
uncertainty that can
som
open
kan öppna
a
en
relation
förbindelse
to the
med det
divine
gudomliga. Här räcker inte de gängse orden
with
till.
commonplace words.
Men det
Here
sällsamma
seeming inadequate.
med
Fosse's
Fosse
rare
är att han
quality is that
lyckas,
he
som
succeeds,
prismotiveringen
as the
lyder,
award citation
att ge
reads,
röst
in
åt
giving
det
voice to
osägbara.
the unsayable.
Redan tidigt
Early
fångar
on
Fosse
in his
det
authorship,
osägbara
Fosse
i
captures
det
the
lilla
unsayable in his
prosastycket.
short
Jag
prose
kunde inte
piece,
säga
I
det
couldn't
till
say
dig.
to you, from
Vi möter en
1991.
gammal man
Where
som
we
inte kan bli
meet an old
kvitt
man who is
det
unable to
glimrande
rid himself
minnet
of the
av
vivid
något han
memory of
inte
something
förmått
he
säga
has failed to
till sin
say to
älskade
his
genom
beloved
alla år.
throughout all these years
Han
together.
kan inte glömma
He
hennes
has not
blick
forgotten
när
her
hon sitter
look in her
ensam
eyes
vid ett
as she
bord
sits
i
alone at the table
skolmatsalen.
in the school cafeteria.
Och minnet
A memory
har
that remains
obevekligt
lodged in
bitit
his
sig
mind
fast
from
i
that
honom.
day forward.
Inte ens på hennes
This is
dödsbädd
the case even
är
on
det
her
möjligt.
deathbed. Words and
Ord
life
och
have
liv
drifted
har
apart.
glidit isär. Men när
But when
Fosse
Fosse
ger
allows
den
the old
gamle
man to voice
röst
the
åt det
unsaid,
omöjliga,
the impossible is
förvandlas det
transformed into both
till
a
en
touching
berörande
elegy and a
elegi
triumph over
och
speechlessness.
triumf över språklösheten. I det sena
In the late
storverket
masterpiece
Septologin som
Septology, completed in
fullbordades
2021,
2021
The
är
main
huvudpersonen
character,
Asle en
Asle, is
åldrad
an elderly
målare
artist who, in
som
the
i
spirit of the
bön
medieval
vänder sig till
Christian
en
mystic
Gud
Meister
bortom alla
Eckhart,
begrepp och
turns in
föreställningar
prayer
i den
to a
kristne
God beyond all
medeltidsmystikern
concepts
Mäster
and
Eckharts anda.
ideas.
Men både i det tidiga
Both in the
prosastycket
previously
som jag
mentioned
nämnde
early piece and
och i den
here in this
sena
later novel,
romanen
the
är
protagonist
huvudpersonen
is
uppfylld
nevertheless
av en
filled with
oro
an anxiety
som skapar en
which
spänning
creates a tension between
mellan
the
det
mundane
vardagliga och
and
det
the
gudomliga.
divine.
Det är denna
It is this
oro
anxiety
som ger
that lends
hela
the work its
författarskapet en
internal
inre
drama.
dramatik. Jon Fosse
Jon Fosse is not
är
a
ingen svår
difficult writer.
författare.
He
Han använder
uses
de
the simplest
enklaste
of
ord
words and
och skriver
writes
om
about
erfarenheter som vi
experiences
alla
to which we can
har en
all
relation
relate.
till.
separation,
död
death,
och
and the
sårbar
vulnerability
kärlek.
of love.
Det svåra hos
Any
oss
difficulty with
rör
Fosse
snarare
rather
vår
concerns our
beredskap
readiness to open
att
ourselves
öppna oss
to the
för den
existential
existentiella
uncertainty
osäkerhet
upon which
som
he
han ständigt
constantly
rör
touches. But the
Men att han är
fact
en av
that
samtidens
he's one
mest
of
spelade
today's most
dramatiker
widely
vittnar
performed
om att också
playwrights
denna
indicates that
vånda
this is a
kan
torment shared
delas av
by
många.
many.
Det
What is
speciella med
remarkable
Fosses
about Fosse's
enkelhet
simplicity
är att den
is
får
that it
djup
gains
och
depth and
intensitet
intensity
genom
through
att
repetition
upprepas
and
och
variation.
varieras. I
In
Fosses
his
tidiga
narrow
gastkramande
harem,
roman
early
Stängd
novel
gitarr,
Closed Guitar,
där en mor
in
låser
which
sig
a mother
ute
locks
och
herself
därmed
out
skiljs
of a
från sin
flat
lilla
and becomes
dotter,
separated from her baby
är det
daughter,
paniken
a
som
sense of
blivit
panic
ett
emerges
med
into the
språkformen.
language form.
I den
In the shimmering
skimrande
world of
berättelsen
morning
Morgon
and
och kväll
evening,
övergår
anxiety
oron
turns to
i
wonder
förundran
and
och djup
profound
förtröstan,
consolation as an old
där den gamle
man
Johannes en morgon
named
håller på att
Johannes
dö
awakes one
och hans
morning to find
verklighetssinne
he's dying
börjar
and begins to
svikta.
lose his sense of reality.
I septologin
In septology,
blir den
the rolling
böljande prosan
prose,
utan punkt
devoid of
ett,
sentence,
med målaren
breaks,
Asles
become one of the
irrande
painter
tankar
Asles wandering
och
thoughts,
suger in läsaren
drawing in the
med
reader with
hypnotisk
hypnotic power.
kraft. Antingen kretsar
Either
Fosse
Fosse
runt det
focuses on the
osägbara som
unsable,
är de här
as in these
verken,
works, or he
eller så
chooses the
väljer han
language of science,
tystnadens språk
as in
som i
his
sin
radical
radikala
renewal
förnyelse av
of world drama during the
svärdsdramatiken under
1990s.
1990-talet.
Beginning
Med början i det
with
internationella
Someone is going to
genombrottet,
come, the play
någon
with
kommer att
which he made
komma,
his international
upptäcker
breakthrough,
han
he
möjligheten att
discovers
låta
the possibility of allowing
språklösheten ta
speechlessness to
kropp på scenen.
materialize on stage.
På
In the
teatern
theatre, all this
måste
is
allt
internal
inre komma
must
ut,
be revealed.
och det som
And
inte
what
kan
cannot be
sägas
said
måste
must
också
too be
få
given
en
a
röst.
voice.
Och det
This
sker
is
i
demonstrated
en
in a
lång
long
rad
series of
emotionellt
emotionally
laddade
charged
pjäser
plays that
som
includes the
Namnet,
name,
Dröm
Dream
om
of
hösten
Autumn,
eller
and Death
Dödsvariationer.
Variations.
Där
Here,
vidgas också
time
tiden
expands
där
to
de
allow
döda
the
tar
dead
plats
to
i
take their
scenrummet.
place on stage.
Jon
Jon
Fosse
Fosse is
är
the
den första
first Nobel Prize
Nobelpristagaren i
laureate in
litteratur
literature
som
to write
skriver på
in
nynorska.
nynorsk. And like
Och
his
precis
great
som
Norwegian
sin store norske föregångare
predecessor,
Terje
Terje
Vesaas
Vesaas, he
förtjänar han
combines strong
en stark
local
lokal
ties
anknytning
with
med
a
en tro
belief in the
på
possibilities of
samtidslitteraturens
contemporary
möjligheter.
literature.
Han
He
skyr
shies
den
away from what we might
slutgiltiga
consider to be
formuleringen,
definitive wording,
vilket gör det
making it
nästan
almost
omöjligt
impossible to
att
quote
citera
him.
honom. Han är
As
på så
such,
sätt
he is the
ambivalensens
master of
och det
ambivalence and
oavgjordas
of the
mästare.
unresolved.
I
In
hans
his
värld
world,
vibrerar
uncertainty pulses
osäkerheten av
with a
ett
secret light.
ljus. Käre Jon
Dear
Fosse,
John Fosse,
tillåt mig
allow me
att
to convey
framföra
the
den
warm
svenska
congratulations of the
akademins
Swedish
varma
Academy while
gratulationer
asking you to step
och be
forward
stiga fram
to
och motta
receive
Nobelpriset
from
i
the hand of His
litteratur
Majesty
ur
the
Hans
King
Majestät Konungens hand.
the Nobel Prize in Literature. Jon Fosse was born in Haugesund and grew up in Skanderborg outside Bergen on the Norwegian Westland. And fittingly, we will now be listening to some music by Edvard Grieg, the Norwegian composer and pianist who is widely considered one of the leading Romantic era composers. Grieg, who himself came from that region, born in Bergen. The piece is Anitra's Dance from Peer Gynt Homage March. This Commerce March is the third part of Edvard Grieg's work, Síguenos. And now we are arriving at the last station on this trip. It is time for the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel, after a speech by Professor
Your
Kerstin N.
Majesties,
Flo.
Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen, it is about time. This year's prize in economic sciences is essentially about time. Time should have the potential to be a great equalizer. Everybody gets the same daily allowance and get to choose how to spend it. But although the length of the day is equally distributed, its span is often not enough for the pursuit of life's many goals. Because raising children takes time. Engaging in a long educational program takes time. Investing in a career, climbing the promotional ladder, takes time. Claudia Goldin explains that women had to make choices about time under different constraints than men. These choices had economic underpinnings and were appropriate given the circumstances of the time and the ability of women to peer accurately into the future. The result, however, has been unequal outcomes in how much time women spend working in the labor force, in how much they earn when they work. It is about time, because living conditions change over time. Goldin shows how a host of technological advances in the home, refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, and washing machines, freed up women's time during the past century. She explains how the emergence of birth controls in the 1960s improved women's ability to plan career and family. As a result, the rate of women entering the labor market tripled in many countries, undeniably one of the largest economic and social changes of modern times. But can we expect that the mere passage of time will do the trick? Claudia Goldin tells us that historically this has not been the case. She digs deeply into the archives and reveals the various types of work carried out by female professionals who were not listed with occupations in historical censuses. But they were butchers, bakers, seamstresses, shoemakers, pewterers, coopers, pewters, tinplate workers, glass engravers, and ironmongers, just to mention a few. Despite being absent from official records, these women carried out their work. With industrialization, these professions became rarer among women, and during 200 years of American history, female labor market participation decreased before it increased. Time served as a divider before it became an equalizer. It is about time, because change takes time. Goldin's work teaches us that history progresses slowly as each generation achieves its own form of success, then passes the baton to the next. On a wintry day in Chicago in 1971, a baton was surely passed. A young woman dressed in high boots and a fashionably short coat that barely covered her miniskirt observed a gray-haired woman, a retired professor, walk into the computer center carrying a large box of punch cards. The two women were separated by more than their age and by more than their fashion sense, but they occupied the same moment in time. What the young woman learned from the older one was that women could have the same commitment to research as male professors. She saw a vision of the possible and felt the desire to achieve what was lacking. In her book, Career and Family, Goldin recalls this moment as an apparition, a reminder of the past and a vision of the future at the same time. Today, a wintry day in Stockholm will forever be another historical moment. Professor Claudia Goldin, it is about time that the world learns the long work history of half its population. Your research has radically changed what we know about women in the labor market and how we understand what we know. Today, we celebrate your path-breaking academic achievements. They are more than a baton to be passed. They are giant shoulders from which coming generations will be able to see very far. It is an honor and a privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations. May I now please ask you to step forward and receive your prize from Her Majesty the King.
Professor Claudia Goldin, who lives in Boston and works at Harvard University, is the third woman to receive the prize in economics out of a total of 93 laureates so far. Standing ovations for the laureates, and now the Swedish national anthem. It's time for the guests to leave the auditorium to the Queen of Sheba's Festivity March by Hugo Alvin. Thank you for this year's prize ceremony here from Stockholm. Welcome back next year.